Hi guys, I'm Alicia. I'm an alcoholic. Good morning. I've been through the steps as they're laid out in the Big Book with the help of a Big Book step study sponsor. A lot of Big Book meetings. A God of my understanding. I'm making amends. I'm making financial amends right now, and I'm practicing the steps to the best of my ability on a daily basis. I'm really nervous right now. I don't like being looked at, and you're all looking at me, which is unavoidable. It's hard for me to talk about step one. It was hard for me to read step one with my sponsor because I don't understand the mental blank spot, and I always try to understand everything. I want to know what's wrong so I can fix it. That's the unmanageability for me. I think I can fix it. I think there's got to be something I can do to fix this problem. When I was drinking, I've actually been sober longer than I was drinking. It was really quick for me. The first time I picked up a drink, I was 14 and I blacked out at a football game. We had poured a bunch of stuff from my stepdad's bar into these water bottles, and I didn't know anything about alcohol and just kept drinking it. And I was pretty much in an alcoholic coma the first time. I didn't really drink a whole lot when I was younger. That didn't happen until I was actually of age to drink. I couldn't celebrate my 21st birthday because I'd already been drinking in the bar for a couple of years that I was wanting to celebrate in, so I couldn't celebrate. But I think when I really started, when I had done a lot of other things in my past, but when I picked up my first drink, as kind of a young adult, that was it for me. There wasn't even really any fun to it because every time I drank, I would end up blacked out or in really, really horrible situations. I'd wake up in the hospital, I'd wake up in jail. A lot of times when I woke up in the hospital, I was chained down to the bed because I became, as this gentleman did, violent every time I drank. Seriously violent to myself and to others, and that was not the person that I was. That wasn't the person that I was. I had not ever lived my life that way, and I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how this had happened to me. I was scared. I was ashamed. I was really, really ashamed of how I acted, how I behaved. And I was even more ashamed that I couldn't stop it. And I just couldn't stop myself from doing it. Why not? I drank heavily for about 5 years before I stopped. Drinking heavily, it's not, I picked up a drink. That's all it was. The first drink was what it did it for me. And then the allergy was activated and I couldn't quit. Even though I knew every time what was going to happen. I had full knowledge of myself. Not as an alcoholic per se. I wouldn't say at that time I knew I was an alcoholic. I just knew when I drank this was going to happen. And I really didn't care. I really did not care. It was for me to the point in my life I'd gotten to a pretty young age where I didn't want to live. I didn't know how to live. I couldn't kill myself. I had tried that once, and I was scared. I was really scared of the ultimate void. So I was in this living hell. I couldn't drink. I couldn't relieve the pain of my life and what I was doing when I would drink, and I couldn't end my life. So what do? I kept drinking. I lived in that mental blank spot where I knew that the only option I had, or I thought I had at the time, was to drink because I couldn't live with myself when I was sober, and I couldn't live with the effects of what I was doing when I was drinking. So the only thing I could do was try to maintain a consistent blackout state where I was just not awake, not conscious, not having to look at the way I was living my life. There was no other way for me. When I finally got to the point, and when I read this with my sponsor, I was like, yeah, I know I'm an alcoholic, because by that time I did. I had quit drinking a while before I started the steps. I hadn't really understood the idea of powerlessness until I went through this with my sponsor and read it. I thought, okay, I quit drinking, I've stayed stopped, I'm good, but it was all me. I thought I was doing it. I thought if I go to enough meetings, if I reach out and ask for help, if I do all of these things, then I won't drink. And to some extent that's true, but I still thought it was in my power to stop it. I didn't understand that I had an alcoholic mind, and that even though I wasn't drinking, that was still going on, all of that stuff. That's how I was made. When I was a kid, I remember I had this fascination with some female movie star. I don't even know who it was now, but I watched this movie and I loved her. And I remember seeing in a tabloid that, she was drinking. It's some tabloid photo in the grocery store, and she was drinking. And right then, I lost respect for everyone in the world. I thought she broke my heart. I thought she was this good woman. And I wouldn't even watch a movie where, someone was drinking or someone was doing drugs, because I was that anti-anything, anything bad. And I became the person that couldn't live without a drink in my hand, or various other things. I don't know who that person is. I know that's the person I am when I'm drinking, but I don't know who that person is. It's part of that whole big black void. And it's hard for me to remember that part of my life because it was just a big black void. If I wasn't blacked out, I was in the process of being blacked out, and I don't understand it. What I didn't understand either was that, why do I keep doing this? I know what's going to happen. Why do I keep doing it? Because I have an alcoholic mind. When I put the alcohol in my body, I can't stop because there's an allergy in me. I'm made where I can't tolerate alcohol. I can't have just one. I knew that when I started working the steps with my sponsor. I knew that when I read this, but I didn't understand that. It's always going to be there with me. When I heard the word powerless in step 1 at my first AA meeting, I automatically went, I got the power. You're not going to tell me I don't have any power. I didn't want to drink, but I thought I had it under control because I was sober and I didn't have to drink. But fortunately, I did stay sober. However, I know, and I think this affects me more now that I'm not drinking because it reminds me of all of the things underneath what goes on before I pick up the drink. Like it says here, we'll describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking. I never thought about that. I thought I drank because I was unhappy, I was miserable, I was angry, I was very angry. I didn't like my life. I thought that's why I drank. But really, from going through this, and it's a very wordy chapter, from going through this, I realized that that's just the way I am. That's my first nature is to pick up something other than me, so I don't have to be me anymore. So I don't have to live with this, and so I don't have to deal with anything, and so I can be in control. When I was drinking, I thought I was in control, It was the only thing I had left in my life that gave me a feeling of that I had any power. And I was scared of the idea that something else had control over me. And I was scared of the idea when I would hear about God and a higher power that I had to concede that that was the only thing that was going to help me. Because I didn't want that to help me. I wanted to think, I got this. You're not going to tell me what to do, God. It was very, 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 I don't even know the word, defiant. When I was reading through this with my sponsor, she said, they say here we can't diagnose you as an alcoholic. Good, because if someone else had told me, I would have said, no, you're wrong, I'll show you, and then proceeded to get blackout. But she said, there's 2 questions I can ask myself. When I start drinking, can I stop? No, absolutely not. I knew that. And when I stop, can I stay stopped? That was a little trickier for me because I had stopped and I had stayed stopped. But this tells me, I am an alcoholic with an alcoholic mind, and if the time or place were to arise, and that could be anything, I could be fine. It could be a great day like today, and who knows, if I don't stay spiritually fit, I could end up drunk. No matter how long I've been sober, no matter how many meetings I go to, no matter how many people I talk to, because I have an alcoholic mind. I'm really grateful I understand that now, because it keeps me not only motivated to keep reaching out to my God, but also to know really what the essence of this disease is for me. It starts up here. And it's not even something I can think my way through, as these people have tried to do. Self-knowledge of that I'm an alcoholic isn't going to fix me. Because I knew I was an alcoholic and I still kept picking up the drink. I knew it. But I kept doing it. That's the unmanageability for me. And I looked this up this morning because I actually hadn't looked it up when I was reading this with my sponsor like she told me to. Unmanageability is defined as a difficult or impossible to manage, manipulate, or control. So when I was drinking, and there were very few times when I would try to actually control it because I just knew I didn't want it to control it. I wanted to be blacked out. But there was one time I can specifically remember where someone had asked me to go have coffee after work, and we got out of work at like 11 o'clock at night, and she's like, let's go to the bar at Applebee's. And I thought, the bar at Applebee's, there it is. It's like putting whiskey in my milk. Oh, that makes sense. And I didn't order a coffee. I had 1 beer. And it was just in time. I thought, okay, I can have 1 beer, and if I drink it before the liquor store is closed, then I won't be able to get to the liquor store to get more liquor. Because I knew already what was going to happen. I was going to want another one. So I sat there, and I tried to drink that beer for about 20 minutes. I thought, if I drink it slow, I'll be fine. The time will pass. I won't get to the liquor store. And I got home at like 10 minutes till the liquor stores closed, and I was sitting on my couch, and I was trying to avoid going to the liquor store. I got there right before it closed. I loaded up on beer, and that was that. That was the one time I really tried to control it, and I never tried after that because I just knew there was no way I was going to control this. I did try to manage my own life. Even when I was drinking, I remember I tried to switch from vodka and whiskey. I was drinking a lot of really cheap whiskey. And I thought, if I switch to wine, I'll be okay. I won't be a real alcoholic. And I went to the store and I bought like the biggest bottle of cheap wine I could find. It was huge. It wasn't the box wine, but it was close to it. And I thought, oh, okay, this will be great. I'll just drink wine now. I'll be classy. And after that one bottle, which took me maybe a half an hour to drink, I was out getting another one because there just wasn't enough in there to get me to the blackout point I wanted to be at. It talks about how we try to control our drinking. Those are the only times I really actually tried to. There wasn't much of that. I didn't really want to quit at a point, even though I could see what I was doing to people around me. I could see what I was doing to myself. I just had no hope whatsoever. All through this chapter, and it talks about how I think this is going to work, how I think I can quit, what I think. I didn't have any idea of any other higher power or God or anything until I got to the point where I realized I was physically addicted. I don't know, about a month before I actually quit drinking. And that was what really hit home for me, because no longer could I fantasize in my head about how this is going to work the rest of my life. No longer could I rationalize, oh, okay, if I just don't pick up the drink, I just won't drink. I was shaking. I was shaking and I couldn't eat food, and I was either in a constant state of blackout or trying to get a drink, and that scared me. That's when I asked for help. And that's, when it talks about higher power at the very end, we have to have help of a higher power. I didn't have God, but I knew about AA. I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous because I'd been to a few meetings before where I would sit in the back drunk, and I would listen, and I'd just be there because it was the only place I felt safe, where other people were like me and I wasn't alone. And that's what I needed at the very beginning, because just someone else to say, okay, I get it, me too, it's not a big deal, look, I have a good life. I needed that. And so that was my higher power at the very beginning. I knew that I wanted to live, which was a big deal for me because I'd never really wanted that. I had hope that this would help, and it did. It did help. I could just sit in a room, and I could hear other people share their experience with their disease and what they'd been through and what it had done to them and how they were now living. That was the important part for me. But can I get through this? Yes, I can get through this. Why? Because someone else got through it. How did they do it? I didn't listen at first. I didn't listen to any of it. I just showed up, and that was enough for me to keep going until I could get to where I was working the steps and where I was willing to say, all right, fine, you know what? My life was okay. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't miserable, and I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't living. I knew in the back of my mind, I knew that eventually I was going to pick up another drink because my life wasn't going anywhere. I was still trying to run the show, and I wasn't asking the God that I have now for any help and direction. And there's more to life that I want than that. What I like about what I really need in this program, from the very start, when we read step 1, the first part last week, and every step in here there's promises and there's hope for me. And I didn't have that before I knew that the steps are in the big book, for one thing, that there is a program of recovery and not just a program of how I can stay sober. I thought I knew it. And there's a lot of hope here. For one thing, they talk in this specific chapter about the men that were reaching out. I didn't have anyone reaching out to me to tell me to try to help me with my drinking. They just wanted to stop me trying to steal their money and steal their car and steal everything and take everything that they had. My family, they wanted me committed, and they had me committed many times. So I didn't have, someone reaching out and saying, here's the solution. I just had people trying to stop me from murdering myself or someone else, which was really what was going on. And from the beginning here, it talks about how they do that, how these men had found an answer. They had found an answer that worked for them, and they went out and they tried to help other people. That's what I try to do to the best of my ability now, because that's what the program of AA is for me. It's asking God to help me in the morning, keep me away from a drink, because I can't do that myself. Even if I think I can, I can't. I have to ask for help. I've tried doing it my own way. I've tried staying away from a drink, and it just never worked. So if you're sitting here and you're hearing the word God and you're hearing the word powerless and you're like, yeah, right, I don't think so, I was too. And because I worked this way with a sponsor who's a lot of experience working the steps with other women as well, that was kind, and that said, just keep doing this because it will work for you. I've come to where I can honestly say, I have to have a higher power that will help me relieve my alcoholic mind. Because when I'm trying to think my way through it, that's my alcoholic mind. That's going to get me in a lot of trouble. I have hope. I have hope that it's not up to me anymore. And I can honestly say, God, please help me. I know you will. That's AA first, and AA comes first, but God comes most. That's what my sponsor taught me. And for the first time in my life, I could listen, and I could say, all right, I'll try it your way. And it's not even her way. It's the way of, our higher power and the way of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. She didn't come up with it. She just does what her sponsor did, and we do what these gentlemen at the very beginning did. Unmanageable. Sometimes I find myself still trying to manage my own life, manipulate or control situations that I can't, none of it. And I like that every time I read this, and every time I sit in a step 1 meeting, and every time I try to work with someone else, this brings it a little more home to me, and it gets me a little more inside. That's the beautiful part of it, is that all these things that I never thought I would get, I'd never understand, I'm not good enough, this isn't going to happen, I do. A little bit more, and a little bit more I can open up and say, hey God, bring out in me what you want me to be. Help me so I can help someone else out of this torturous hell that is alcoholism. Torturous hell, that's the only word I have for it, a nightmare torturous hell. I don't have to live like that today, and I don't live like that today. From where I was to where I am now, it's night and day. And I'm really, really, really grateful every day that I can wake up and be alive and take a breath. And not only that, but have a little bit of hope that it's going to be okay. There's so much in here that I just can't go through any more of it, because otherwise my mind starts going a little crazy. Thank you everyone for being here today.